Women Worldwide with Deirdre Breakenridge introduces incredible stories shared by women across the globe who have experienced the great heights of success and, at times, the agony of defeat. With a vision to impart wisdom and advice on how to tackle barriers and soar to new heights, the show uncovers different perspectives to help you find your inner strength and to power up your own voice so you can excel in life.
Welcome to Women Worldwide. I'm your host, Deirdre Breakenridge. Let's kick off this episode with a topic that needs attention: women serving on boards of companies. So the last statistics I saw came from the Gender Diversity Index back in 2005, and it basically said that of the 842 active companies on the Fortune 1000 list, women held 18.8% of board seats. Now, this is actually an increase from 2014, which at that time it was 17.7%. So if you even go back a little bit further, in 2011, women held 14.6% of board seats. So you can see by the numbers that they're rising, but not enough. Well, my special guest today will be able to shed some light based on her extensive business and board experience. Joining us today is Caren Merrick. She's the founder and CEO of Pocket Mentor. And before becoming an entrepreneur, Caren was a partner at Bibury Partners, an angel investment and advisory firm. She also, earlier in her career, this is really interesting, she was the co-founder and EVP of webMethods and led the company to the most successful software IPO in the year 2000. Caren's here to share her career journey and her insights on women serving on boards. Caren, it's great to have you on my show. Welcome.
Thank you. It's delightful to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. And you really have an interesting story because, like I said, you were a partner at an angel investment an advisory firm, and then you kind of made this shift to entrepreneur, and now you're the CEO of Pocket Mentor. So this is a very different career, and I'm sure life for you. So first off, what is Pocket Mentor? And tell us a little bit about what inspired your transition.
Okay, well, thanks. Great question. Pocket Mentor is a mobile app for leaders and aspiring leaders to grow themselves, grow their teams, and grow their businesses. And as you mentioned, I am a serial entrepreneur. I've either started or invested in dozens of enterprises, and I've mentored management teams, and I've helped people who were sort of earlier in their career to grow and scale into managers and leaders. And I noticed that there's a real lack of opportunity for aspiring leaders and really talented professionals to get the mentoring that they need. There's just really a supply and demand issue. There's not enough willing, able, capable, talented mentors to go around. And so I decided to develop this app to make it easy for leaders to get the kind of information that they can use every day right from their smartphone.
Oh my goodness. Well, that's really interesting and definitely needed. So through your work, I'm sure you've come across many different types of professionals. And, you know, one of the things that I found really interesting about you was the fact that you serve on so many boards. So I'm thinking that a lot of the folks that you mentor might be interested in serving on boards. You know, you're a big proponent of this, so there's a lot of questions. For example, when you want to serve on a board, where would somebody start if they were looking toward a mentor? You know, how would you go about this?
Yes, that is the number one question I'd say that I get asked by women in particular, but some men do ask as well. From at every age and stage of their careers, whether they're just starting out, they've had a wonderful academic career, they've graduated from a really great school and they're just starting out, or they're entrepreneurs, they're women who have already started a business and they've grown it very successfully, or these are women who are already working for global businesses and have a track record of doing really great work. And they all have that one thing in common, which is I see myself serving on a board one day. And I think that is really the first step, is to identify that this is something that you would want to do. And then do the next best thing, which every leader, regardless of what they're leading, should do, and that is invest in their own self-discovery. Why do you want to serve on a board is a good question to ask. Is it because you want to tap into your expertise and help the business grow? That's a good reason. Is it because you want to keep growing yourself professionally? Another great reason. Is it because you realize that it's not okay that only 18% of board members of the Fortune 5000, Fortune 1000 are women? And Deirdre, to add to that metric, it's not just the Fortune 1000. It's much smaller enterprises. It's of the whole universe of publicly traded companies, the companies that have the most representatives who are women are the bigger companies. But then there are smaller cap companies who don't have any women on their management team or their board. So we have a lot of work to do, and that's why I'm delighted to be part of the conversation and part of equipping women to become more, to step up and step out and serve on boards.
You're right. I wasn't even thinking about all of those smaller enterprises. And I can only imagine what the numbers would look like. It's a little bit scary, but do you ever come across people who, you're mentoring or they're in your network and you kind of feel like, wow, you should have that board position? Do you often come across professionals?
I do. It happens all the time. And, there are a few reasons for that. One is that I think women aren't stepping up to indicate that they can serve on a board. And then the other is that the board openings themselves don't come up that often. And there are a number of reasons for that as well. And it's really worth noting, Deirdre, that there is no one single path to a board. And there are a variety of boards and a variety of paths. So I think a lot of women who are aspirational and qualified and want to serve on a public company board, that is a great goal, and that is something that I think more and more women are going to achieve. In the meantime, there are things that women can do now to prepare themselves for a public company board and to start serving on other kinds of boards until those opportunities arise for them.
So you said something that's really interesting. Women aren't stepping up. In your experience, do you know why? Do you kind of have a reason for thinking this, or what do you see out there?
Well, I think that obviously there's been quite a bit of research on these topics, and Sheryl Sandberg's best-selling book, Lean In, but really there are so many reasons why. I do believe that women need to identify and articulate and see themselves as a contributor in a boardroom. And I think part of that is cultivating their own sense of knowing their strengths and being able to articulate them. But then there's also a whole skill set for women to cultivate throughout their careers, which is sort of taking on new projects, stepping up out of your comfort zone and taking risks in your career. And certainly that was the case for me because, I co-founded a company from zero, grew it to $200 million a year. We took it public on the NASDAQ, and it became a global company of 1,100 employees. So at every stage from 0 to 200 million, there were lots of opportunities for me to try new things, for me to step outside my comfort zone, for me to make mistakes, for me to learn from those mistakes and keep growing. And that's really part of what makes you a valuable board member, is that you have a lot of experience that you can then bring into an enterprise and help them achieve all their goals with their own variety of stakeholders.
So that's interesting. I mean, you certainly can't do what you did if you don't step out of your comfort zone. You had mentioned in an earlier conversation about board boot camp. So it's almost like if you don't have a mentor, or a mentor is not in your network to help you to become board ready, talk about boot camp. What is that like?
I actually, becoming ready for a board is, really there are things you can do on your own without a mentor. It's great to have a variety of mentors in your career, people who you know and people who you don't know. Like most of us don't know Sheryl Sandberg, but we can read her book and benefit from her wisdom. But yes, I did go to a board boot camp that I highly recommend that was developed by women corporate directors. And it was 2 or 3 days in New York City. And it was, the curriculum was fantastic. It was very intensive. It complemented all of my own experience, but it went further than even what I had already done professionally, by being on the senior management team of a publicly traded company. And I also met other women there who were either serving on public company boards or who aspired to, or who were maybe serving on nonprofit boards or community boards or private company boards. So there was a great interchange. And for me, the most important part was that I started to be able to see myself more as someone who could contribute on a board, because it's not like one day you wake up and you say, "Oh, I'm ready to be a board member." It's something I think that you grow into and that you think about. And in terms of a boot camp, that's a really key step. And Women Corporate Directors is an organization I highly recommend.
Oh, that sounds excellent. So a lot of this sounds like you're also building your network at the same time, which is so valuable. I just want to step back a minute because, you were talking about the mentoring, and it's really important to pay it forward. So do you feel that you have been paying it forward your entire career, or when did you really feel the need to mentor and to get people board ready, let's say?
Well, for me, it really just comes so naturally, where I just I want to, particularly with colleagues and younger women, I really want to see them achieve their potential. Probably that's because personally, I come from a family of very humble means. I'm the first woman in my family to earn a college degree, and I saw what happened, after I put myself through college, and these doors were open for me, and then I had to walk through those doors. And so I've had a variety of mentors. I've gone to people to ask for their advice. I've studied on my own, and so I really want to help people. But I've discovered that the best way to help people is to really identify those folks who really want to help themselves, and then give them advice and see if they follow it. Like a really good mentor-mentee relationship, the mentee brings something into the mix themselves, and that's a willingness to work, a good attitude, and someone who's actually going to follow your advice and come back and tell you whether or not it worked.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you find that are you identifying folks, or relationship starts and then you become a mentor, and it's a formal kind of I'm the mentor, you're the mentee, or is someone coming to you and saying I need a mentor? How does the relationship actually form?
Well, for me, it's happened a variety of ways. For example, some folks have just come to me informally throughout the years and asked for my advice, and I've given it to them. And I've been surprised later, and actually honored that later on they'd say, "Oh, you mentored me." And so sometimes it's very informal. Other times I have been a little more structured, and I actually have a mentor where I have a structured relationship with her. Where we meet every so often to discuss specific things. So even though I'm a mentor, I still have a mentor.
Oh, yeah. I think no matter how old I get or where I am in my career, I'm always going to have a mentor. What do you like better, the informal or the structured relationship?
I think it depends on the situation, and it depends on the person, the personalities, and what the goals are. If you really have some very ambitious goals, I think the structured mentor is great because they're going to hold you accountable and help you. You'll be working on this project together in tandem. If it's just more general counseling, and encouragement and advice, I think it's great to keep it informal. And, again, I will say we all have a variety of mentors in our lives at any given time. It's not just one person. And one of the reasons that I like the mobile app, Pocket Mentor mobile app, is because you can actually get answers from the mobile app. And so you don't have to use up your time with your mentor for some of these things that you can actually be learning on your own. And that's really frustrating being a mentor, to have someone come and take up some of my time and then realize, that you could have figured this part out.
Exactly.
let's talk about the things that you really do need someone who's been there and done that to help you out with.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. There's also a lot, whether it's, I think Pocket Mentor sounds awesome. There's so much information that we have at our fingertips today. So, and professionals
like your
are
podcast, Deirdre. The podcast is the perfect example of that.
Thank you. Well, yeah. So you can tune into podcasts. Some people are going to Google. Some are in Twitter chats on topics that they want to understand, or they're in Facebook groups or LinkedIn, whatever it is. There's so much information that it makes it better for the mentor-mentee relationship, because then you can really save it for the things that you want to learn from someone else's experience that you know and that you trust. So interesting dynamic. You had also said in an earlier conversation that you are the most important platform. What did you mean by that?
Well, there is this misconception for women and men, young and old, that in order to succeed, you have to know the right people, have the right pedigree, come from the right family, have connections in order to really succeed. And while those are very helpful attributes, by no means are those required for you to find your purpose and to achieve great things for your lives and for the world around you. And so when I say you are your most important platform, it's what are you bringing every day to your work? It's your attitude. It's your willingness to take on new projects. It's your encouraging other people. It's sharing the credit. It's giving other people credit. It's not gossiping. It's sort of rising to the occasion, with your character and your attitude. And those things are really those attributes that open doors much, much more than those conventional wisdom data points like the school you went to or the family you come from or who you know.
It's really interesting what you said, because it is all about attitude, bringing the right mindset, rising to the occasion. When I look at millennials, whether it's the millennials in my family or just the students who I mentor or who are in my classes, they're really, they're challenged because it is so cutthroat, and you want to have this positive attitude. What would you say to the younger generation so that they can rise to the occasion?
Well, I would say that certainly there is always going to be a percentage of the population that is cutthroat and that might be toxic and certainly doesn't live by what we would understand commonly as the golden rule. But it's much more the minority that is that way than the majority. And so I would say to millennials to find the people that they admire who possess those qualities that I just described, and let those role models inform them and inform their attitude. And I will say that while I have certainly worked very hard and made sacrifices and took risks and failed and got back up again, a lot of the opportunities that came to me, and certainly every single board that I now serve on, those opportunities came to me where people called me up and they said, "I've seen your work and I'd like to talk to you. I want you to be part of our team." And that is, first of all, a very high compliment, but I share that with as many people as I possibly can, because when you are working hard and you're doing your part and you're doing those things I just described, you're giving other people credit, you are going the extra mile, you are offering to help others, you're offering to take on new assignments, you are delivering results, people notice. And it doesn't mean that everyone's going to notice and that everyone's going to appreciate it, but it will mean that the right people notice. And you will find that opportunities come your way because as someone who's been in leadership for many years now, I can tell you, and all the leaders I know, we all seek out people like that who take initiative and who exhibit those qualities of character. And when we find them, we want to encourage them and help them achieve their goals.
And you could see this clearly. Those leadership characteristics do stand out, especially when somebody can work so well with a team. That is something that I've always looked for. Leaders tend to give so much credit, and it's not about them, it's not about their vision, but more so about what the team is doing, and it's really the team that led, the group to success. So I think it's really important, everything that you stated about how if you can kind of rise to the occasion, then those opportunities come to you because you're being rewarded for the way that you've handled yourself in different business opportunities. Well, I'm going to...
Deirdre, it doesn't mean that you have to do everything perfectly. You can have made mistakes. You can have missed a number. You can have had a product launch fail. But it's how you handle those, right, that where people see what you're really made of.
That is so important because I think some of the greatest leaders, I'm sure, have made mistakes and have had failures, but it's what you do moving forward that counts so much. And that's kind of how you're viewed. And that's how we should want to be viewed. If we take everything to heart and, if you make a mistake and you don't move forward, take accountability, it's only going to hurt you in the end. So I think that's all really interesting points. So Caren, I'm going to ask you to hold your thoughts. We're going to take a quick break to give some love to a sponsor. And when we get back, Caren's going to share what reinvention means and what holds people back in their careers.
You have been listening to Women Worldwide with your host, Deirdre Breakenridge. Segment 2 is coming right up.
Creating brand loyalty requires a unique blend of strategic communications and innovative technology. Pure Performance Communications works with businesses to move their audiences from interest to action, giving you a roadmap that fosters deeper engagement and forges stronger relationships along the way. Visit us at pureperformancecom.com. Thank you.
Now, back to Women Worldwide with your host, Deirdre Breakenridge.
I'm Deirdre Breakenridge. Welcome back to the show. Caren Merrick, founder and CEO of Pocket Mentor, and I were just chatting about women serving on boards, mentoring, and paying it forward. So, Caren, we've had a very interesting discussion. I wanted to ask you a little bit about reinvention. After all, you came out of an investment and an angel investment firm, advisory firm, and became a CEO of a startup. So what does reinvention mean to you, and why do you always have to be ready for the next big thing?
Well, you're right. You always have to be ready because I think we were born to reinvent. And I think that if you look at how careers have evolved in the last even 25 years, where people are not staying with one company for their entire career. In fact, people will have several different types of jobs and even different types of careers in their lives. And so I think that's natural, and that's the way that it should be. And it can be very exciting. Of course, reinventing your career can sometimes be forced on you, if your company gets sold or the economy goes bad and a company goes out of business. And so we, I think, should always be thinking about, what is it that we love to do? What's our purpose? Asking those basic questions of self-discovery. What are my strengths? Do I know what I'm good at? Can I articulate it? Even if you've had a lot of success in the past, it doesn't mean you want to keep doing the same thing for your entire career.
Exactly. So if reinvention is forced, do you think that it's tougher to move forward? Or does the person who actually chooses the reinvention, is that an easier road?
Both of them involve change. And I think that it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for everyone. There are, for example, a lot of very talented, highly educated women who, when they start a family, they decide to throttle back in their careers. And so for some women who have been dreaming of the partner track, that might take them a few years longer, or they may never make it at all. For other women, they maybe opt completely out of their careers for a while to invest in another career, which is mentoring and leading their children and teaching their children. So, whatever the scenario is, I think there are certain steps that you can take that will encourage you. And a few things that I always advise people to do is invest in your self-discovery. There are dozens of self-assessments that you can take. I love StrengthsFinder. I took StrengthsFinder myself a few years ago when I was thinking that I wanted to try something new. And before I started Pocket Mentor, I took StrengthsFinder, and it was like a revelation. I highly encourage people to do it. I think it costs $15, and it takes you 20 minutes, and 11 million people around the world have taken it. So it's based on science. But know yourself, and then surround yourself with other people who are also reinventing, because you can really encourage yourself when you're in that community. And then find a mentor who can help you through the process, whether it's a mentor in your life, someone you've worked with, or someone who is children has done what you want to do, or a variety of mentors through podcasts, books, the Pocket Mentor mobile app. There are a lot of ways to be mentored and to make a plan and to step out and reinvent yourself.
Yeah, there's so many resources that we can rely on. You mentioned, investing in your self-discovery. StrengthsFinder, is that a book? Is that an online survey? What exactly is that, an application?
Oh, yes, it's both. It's all of the above. So you could go to strengthsfinder.com and take the assessment to find your top 5 strengths. I highly recommend it, and I talk about this all the time. It will be a revelation. But there's also a few books that go along with the assessment, and there's a StrengthsFinder's book, and all of these resources are at strengthsfinder.com. The great thing about StrengthsFinder is that you will get a list of your top 5 strengths, and it will be uncanny because you'll think, I didn't realize that was a strength. This is actually valuable. And then you'll get a plan for action for each of your top 5 strengths that gives you kind of a guide, a blueprint of the sort of work that would interest you, that you're already good at, and how to navigate that, as well as how to navigate some of the corresponding weaknesses that go with all of your strengths, especially in interpersonal relationships. So I highly recommend it. It's 20 minutes of your time. I now take a look at my StrengthsFinder assessment, sometimes once a week, sometimes once a month. And it always encourages me because so many of us underestimate our value. And once you can appreciate your value, your confidence grows, and you're more willing to step out and try new things that could be the key to your fulfilling your purpose.
I wonder, even if you are feeling set in your career, if you just want to go and take the assessment, just to see if there's anything else that, or anywhere else you could be valuable. I might check that out.
That's right. No. You know what? You're exactly right about that, because of where you are right now. You're dealing with people all the time. And I have discovered that now that I understand my strengths better, I appreciate other people's strengths better. And some of those issues, which I felt were more difficult, I realize now it's not personal. They are acting out their strengths, and I'm acting out mine. And so it makes it, for me, easier to navigate how I deal with other people, because now I understand this isn't a personality flaw. They are just full on operating in their strength, and they may not even know it.
That's so true. All right, I'm definitely going to check that out. So why do you think people kind of hold back when it comes to their own reinvention? Why wouldn't you just move on full force? What stops someone?
I think that most people hold themselves back. There's a wonderful book that I read many years ago called, I think it's called Do the Work. And it's by a guy who writes all about resistance. And resistance are those self-limiting beliefs that say, I can't do that. Yes. or procrastination that says, oh, I'll do that later. And this book called Do the Work, I highly recommend this book. And I've written a lot about it, especially in my app, because once you embark on a plan for accelerating or advancing in your career, you're going to get a lot of resistance. And resistance, according to Stephen Pressfield, the author of this book, shows up whenever you want to do something worth doing, whenever there is something that's really at the core of what you're meant to do and be in your life. You can guarantee that resistance will come. And he calls it resistance. Other people might call it a lack of confidence. Other people will call it procrastination. I think his term resistance is the umbrella over all of that. And I highly recommend that book too. And as I said, I've written about it. There's certain excerpts of it that I've quoted very briefly and legally from a copyright perspective within my app. But Stephen Pressfield, do the work.
He's great.
Stephen Pressfield, yeah.
I believe he's the author of The War of Art, which I just read.
Yeah.
And that was amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's an amazing book. That was all about resistance and how to get you to move through anything that's resisting you. So, wow. Okay. So he has an earlier book, Do the Work. Okay.
Do the work. And it's like overcome resistance and get out of your own way. And we should all read that once a year, maybe once a quarter.
I agree. I know for a fact that I'm going to be going back. I always mark little tabs in books. There were lots of places that I marked just as a reminder that when resistance pops up, how to think about it differently, what you can do.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Because, Deirdre, we forget what we know. And I have been processing this whole idea that we forget what we know. And that was one of the reasons I created the app, was because I wanted something easy, right on your smartphone. It's like 5 minutes a day to remind you what you know. And there's a notes part of the app so you can write down what you know and what you've learned in your own little epiphanies. And it's right there with you, wherever you are, sitting on the train, sitting on a bus, walking down the street. But that is something central, Deirdre, that you just sort of touched upon, which is you have to remind yourself. And why are we so forgetful about those very things that will move us forward?
Exactly. And do you feel that, in your career, the way that you've been moving, was there any next thing that you felt was particularly challenging, and maybe how did you overcome the resistance?
I feel resistance every day. I do every single day, don't you? I mean, whenever you have these big, audacious goals, you'd think, oh, my goals are too big. And then later on, if I've achieved them, I look back and I think, actually, they could have been bigger. And that's one thing, is remembering that I have a tendency to do that. That also helps me. But I did several years ago, I realized I have a degree in political science because I wanted to help make the world a better place. And I thought, when am I ever going to run for public office? This is why I got my degree in political science from UCLA. And I realized, though, that starting and growing a business, and then we started a foundation that invested in nonprofits that help low-income families in the area of education. So I had been changing the world. And I believe that having a good business is one of the best ways to make the world a better place. And then having a nonprofit that helps fund these social entrepreneurs that are on the front lines helping low-income families, that was great. But I decided to go ahead and run for public office. And I went into this election for the state senate in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and it was like a startup. It was wonderful. And right in the middle of the campaign, the districts were rewritten. And so, truth be told, I was running against a 20-year incumbent who was chairwoman of the Privileges and Elections Committee.
Oh, boy.
And her job was to lead the redistricting. So she wrote me out of her district into a district where I didn't know anybody, and it was the opposite political party, and they had 57% of the demographics. And so it was going to be almost impossible to win.
Oh, my gosh, that's tough.
I did indeed lose the election. And but I don't regret running, and I loved the whole experience. It was so much like a startup. And of course, I love startups. So, but since that time, I have made so many friends, and I've become more knowledgeable about how to make a contribution in the community and how to make the political process better.
I love your attitude. You always turn like lemons into lemonade. I get this feeling. So it's really good.
The lemonades are there in the lemons, right? It's not like I've invented the lemonade. The lemonade's already there. I just am cultivating a mindset to discover it.
I love it. I'm going to ask you very briefly, although I have a feeling this could be a much longer answer. I saw that you have an ebook. It's 7 Secrets to Highly Effective Communication. So what do you think is the most important number one secret maybe you could share?
That you can enter into any conversation, good, bad, hard, whatever, with the goal of enriching the conversation, and it will change what you think about yourself and the other person and the outcome of the conversation. It's my number one piece of advice, is to look at every conversation as an opportunity to enrich the relationship. Easier said than done.
Yeah, those are wise words. So even a contentious situation, even a situation where you are up against all odds, to look at it positively and know that there will be something beneficial or learning experience comes out of it. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, enrich the relationship, right? Everything depends on relationships. Everything in business and life comes down to relationships. So even if it's an adversary, you can still think of ways, logical ways, rational ways, thinking ways, ways that advance your cause, but that will enrich the relationship. So it doesn't mean you roll over and you just say, I'm going to be nice. It means you think it through, and it requires more of you than just rushing into a conversation, right? You actually have to think it through. And that's why I think that's, and I didn't invent that advice. That was by a woman who wrote a book called Fierce Conversations, another book I recommend.
What was it? Fierce Conversations?
Fierce Conversations. My mentor, I asked her, what is the best book you've ever read on communications? And she said, Fierce Conversations. And she is a former president of $1 billion company. And so she would know.
Okay, I'm going to put that one on my list too. All right, so maybe you could give a little bit of advice. Let's say you had a friend or a colleague who really, really wanted to excel in their career, but felt their leadership and their communication skills needed work. What would you say to this friend or colleague?
I would say something that I believe John Maxwell said, which is leadership develops daily, not in a day. That you can decide one day at a time that you are going to become a better leader. And you do that through obviously having role models, having mentors who are real, who are around you, but also those who you may never meet. And you just decide that every day you're going to become a better leader. That's the whole genesis of the app, the Pocket Mentor mobile app. It's one day at a time. That's really when the good work happens. It's one day at a time.
That's really good. I always like to say, be a better person, be a better leader. Those two.
Well, that's true.
Right?
Yes.
They definitely go together. Okay. So last question here. It's a really, really simple one. Where can my listeners find out more about you and your work?
Oh, thank you for asking. Well, I have a blog, a website called yourpocketmentor.com, and that'll have all my articles and some really great information. They can download the 7 secrets to highly effective communicators. 7 Secrets to Highly Effective Communicators, and they can see some articles and some of the clips where I've been speaking or I've been on the news, and I'd be delighted to have them come engage with our community.
Excellent. Well, Caren, thank you so much for sharing your career journey, all of your insights on women and serving on boards, mentoring, and what it takes for reinvention. You really gave us a lot of great information, so thank you.
Oh, thanks, Deirdre. You've been a wonderful host. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. I also want to thank all of you for tuning into Women Worldwide. Until our next episode, stay focused, energized, and feeling empowered. Thank you.
You have been listening to Women Worldwide with Deirdre Breakenridge, brought to you by Pure Performance Communications on thesocialnetworkstation.com. You can reach Pure Performance at www.pureperformancecom.com. Women Worldwide is produced by SNI, and the opinions of the hosts and guests do not necessarily reflect those of Social Network Intermedia, LLC, or the Social Network Station.